Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in and joining us for another episode of the Dream Achiever series. Today, I get to sit down with my new friend, Bradely Grove Hyson. Bradely is a teacher, speaker, author, organizer, and artist who has dedicated his life to building healthy, sustainable, peaceful communities throughout the world. Over 3 decades, he has appeared before thousands of people in a variety of settings and formats. He continues to lecture, present, coach, consult, and lead different courses, retreats, and workshops. He has authored Awakening 101 Foundations for a Healthy, Sustainable, Peaceful World, The Life is a Miracle children's picture book series, and he founded Giant Smile Media, a production company that focuses attention on the transformation of individuals, organizations, and communities towards a healthier, more sustainable system and infrastructure all over the world. Bradely, thank you for joining me here again today. We just wrapped up an hour and 15-minute podcast conversation, and I'm really excited to carry that over into this Dream Achiever series. Thank you so much, my friend.
You're welcome. Thank you, Brian.
Let's tell our audience a little bit about yourself and how you arrived where you are today.
Well, I would say that I am a musician for a big portion of my life. This is sort of a shorter version of what we talked about an hour ago.
Yeah.
I would say that I was a musician for a good chunk of my life. Upon graduating from college, I felt very called to get involved in environmental activism. I remember my thinking of the time was that of all of the challenges that society is facing, if we didn't address the ecological one, we may not even be around to address all the others, poverty and, hunger and etc. So for me, I started to volunteer in environmental work right after I got out of college. And I worked for a variety of different organizations. And eventually I landed a job at one of them. And that was called Save the Bay. And while I was working at Save the Bay, I found out about these houses that were made out of discarded automobile tires called earthships that would stay between 50 and 60 degrees year round with no external heat sources. Because they were so well insulated and they were engineered to let the sun in to heat and cool the different buildings. They were generating all their own energy. They were treating all their own waste. They were, beautiful ecological models of housing that also had a much smaller environmental impact. And when I found out about these, I thought to myself, why aren't we all living in houses like this? And I began an initiative. I launched an initiative with colleagues at the organization that I worked for in Providence, Rhode Island, called Save the Bay, to build an earthship in Rhode Island. And we didn't build an earthship, but we did build a house that was a hybrid of over 50 different environmentally friendly systems, technologies, and products that was on a 50-acre piece of land. And we made nature trails, and it was set up like a museum with information exhibits that explained all of the features and what their environmental benefit was. And that was the beginning of my this next phase of, I'd say, the next 15 years of leading this organization that became one of the largest sustainability organizations in the region. And in addition to operating this environmental center on 50 acres in Coventry, Rhode Island, we did a lot of education programs and workshops. We did a lot of after-school programs with elementary school kids. We started a statewide coalition called the Rhode Island Sustainability Coalition, which was an effort to bring NGOs and state agencies and businesses and academia together to work on making Rhode Island the nation's first sustainable state. And when I left the organization, we were doing projects with the governor's office, with most of the major state agencies we worked with. We did some work with our federal congressional delegation to advocate for sustainability. So when we built this house, we saw sustainability illustrated in a building design, but we realized that sustainability principles were salient, whether you're talking about buildings, whether you're talking about transit, whether you're talking about healthcare, whether you're talking about economic development. And so our vision was to have sustainability principles inform everything in the ways that we're growing and developing our state. So the other significant thing about my time when I was the director of this organization, it was called the Aperon Institute for Sustainable Living, was that I got a fellowship to travel the world and visit examples of ecological community developments all over the world. And I went to India and Italy and British Columbia and states all across the country. And I was able to video and photograph and interview all the different people that built these types of developments. And it was really a life-changing experience that continues to inform my views of how we should be developing the built and the built environment, our buildings, communities, and their associated infrastructure. And for me, I think it's one of the undiscussed aspects of the environmental movement and a cogent plan to address carbon emissions, reduce carbon emissions and address climate changes is the ways we're designing and building our communities. And from seeing what I've seen, and as a sustainability expert and an efficiency expert, the waste that we have in modern developments, especially in the suburbs, it's just heartbreaking. It's like
Did you get a chance to go, or have you ever heard of Green Village in Bali?
No.
Oh,
have you been there?
Yeah, you need to look up Green
All
Village
right.
in Bali.
All right.
These giant, amazing structures that just have these like 3-4 stories tall with swooping curves, and they're all made out almost entirely of bamboo. And like
Wow.
one of the neat things about bamboo when it comes to sustainability, I mean, there are species of bamboo that grow like 3 meters a week. It's crazy how fast some different species of bamboo grow and what they're able to do out of it. I highly recommend looking into Green Village in Bali. Have you also heard of Sunray Kelly? He makes really interesting rammed earth homes and mud homes. In crazy swooping architecture. It's a lot like the Hobbit houses in the Lord of the Rings. Really neat stuff. We go ahead.
I feel like I've been a little, I left that organization that I worked for in 2009, 2010, and I feel like I've been a little bit out of the loop. I used to go to like regular conferences all the time, and I knew sort of the most cutting edge of things. And my path has diverged somewhat since then, but I think a lot of the principles are still salient.
It's interesting that you use my path has diverged analogy. One of my favorite quotes is we usually meet our destiny on the path that we chose to avoid it. So since this is the Dream Achiever series and we're talking about awakening to our dream, share a little bit more about how you have awakened to your dream and how your path diverged from running that organization to what you're doing now. Like, how did you have that awareness? How did you awaken to what you're supposed to be doing? And I know this is a constant transformation, but what was that awakening process like for you?
Well, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. My life is always unfolding. It still is unfolding. I left the organization that I worked for. That's a long story. But I think that in my post, being a nonprofit executive director, I started to say, well, how can I serve now? How can I use my gifts and sort of share them with the world now? And as I was writing this book, Awakening 101, Foundations for a Healthy, Sustainable, Peaceful World, I realized that we have all of these solutions. I call them low-hanging fruit to so many of the problems that are facing us right now that don't even necessarily have to cost more money, that we just don't use. And I started to say, like, why is it that we don't use things like that we have? Like, why do we sometimes work against our human interest? And I'm a yogi or from the yogic traditions, and I've been a sort of spiritual seeker. And so, I mean, I've known, I've been fascinated by the human condition,
Hmm.
and I've been fascinated by the power of thoughts in creating our realities, in both opening up infinite possibilities and also closing down infinite possibilities, or how we can use our mind to create joy and love, or we can use our mind to create suffering. And I realized for some of these things, we couldn't even have the conversation until we address some baseline, till we have some basic understanding. And in my book, I talk about where we are, what we are, how we function. I use the distinction natural inherent design. Everything in nature has a natural design. Fish need water, plants need sunlight and soil, and we have a design. And if we don't understand how this works, then it's like, I there's a picture that I use in one of my talks. It's of a 2-year-old holding a chainsaw. And I think giving a human body, the human instrument, to us, if we don't know how to use it, it's like that analogy, because this is, human beings are so powerful. I say more powerful than the atomic bomb are the minds that created it. So we can create miracles and we can create messes. And I think it's high time in this modern world that we start teaching. Words that I use in my book are mental literacy and emotional literacy. I think people, we have to understand our physical wellness, but we certainly have to understand mental wellness and emotional wellness too. It's all connected, but I think science has come a long way in the last 50 years at understanding a lot about how the brain functions, neuroplasticity, the nature of emotions, and these sorts of things. And I think that there's a lot of consensus about what things and what distinctions and what practices will optimize health and well-being. So I talk about those things.
It's really fascinating to me when I watch how our thoughts create our perspective and our perspective creates our reality or shapes our reality. And one of the things that we talked about at length in our podcast was how often in life our paradigm keeps us stuck. The way that we think things are affects us more than the way things actually are. So if we're talking about achieving our dreams and trying to awaken to our life's mission, our dream in life, uh, what would you have to say about the value of paradigm and how the role that plays in finding that dream, that thing that we're meant to be doing?
I always tell my clients that context impacts content. I think in the earlier segment of our recording earlier, I talked about, I always tell my clients, if you're going to make a major decision or you want to do important visioning work, state comes first. You want to get into a good state. So we don't want to force it if we're stressed or have had a bad day or we're struggling. And I think that's a little bit about, it's tied in with what you're talking about with paradigm, right? So it creates these invisible limitations on us. There's a story that I've heard say about how they train elephants is that when they're young, they take a chain and stake their leg to the stake in the ground, and they can't get away. And the elephants think like that's it. So that when that time it's a full-grown elephant, if they just have a rope tied on their leg, even though the elephant is strong enough to break free, they don't know that they can break free. And I think that we see that everywhere. We see that in relationships. We see that in how we relate to ourselves. We see that in ideas about our government or our country or our communities. You know, um, and I think there's some intelligence and some wisdom in that, right? Because life is always changing, but we also need to feel some stability.
Mm.
So it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, until the paradigm is telling
Not
you that,
always a bad thing. Yeah.
right. There are instances where that's a value, unless the paradigm is telling you that you're unlovable or that you're incapable or that you're oppressed or that somebody owes you or that nothing can change or you
Or
don't
that
have the
the
tools
only
to
way
get
we
what.
can meet our or the only way we can meet our energy needs is from burning coal and fossil fuels and nuclear, or everybody has to drive like fuel inefficient vehicles, or everyone has to live in a 10,000 square foot mansion or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I talk about in the Dream Achiever book is the power of belief. It's the second step to achieving anything that you want is to believe that you can actually get there. The analogy that I always like to go to is like if I showed up at your house with a car that had two flat tires, an empty tank of gas, and asked you to go on a road trip with me, and you're like, "Where are we going?" I said, "I have no idea." You say, "Well, how long is it going to take?" I said, I have no idea." How much food are we going to need? How much money are we going to need? I have no idea. And you look at this dilapidated vehicle and this guy that's trying to take you to some arbitrary nowhere. And you're like, yeah, I'm probably not going to get in the car with you. I'm not going to take that first step. I'm not going to try to get in that road trip with you because you don't believe that we'll ever get anywhere in our dreams, and creating the future that we want in the world is a lot like that. Don't you think?
I do. And I think that that's it's like a muscle that we have to develop, and it takes ongoing care. And I sometimes say to people, like, you'd never get up to bat thinking, I know I'm going to strike out. We have to stand for the possibility of, like, I'm hitting a home run every time. And chances are, the bigger the project that you go after, I think, from what I know of you, you can relate to this. The bigger the project that you're going to go after, the bigger the challenges are going to come up, right?
For
Um,
sure.
because we take this that we evolve this state of thinking we can do anything that we set our mind to, so we go for something big. We don't say, my life goal is to buy a soda at the store or something like that. We want to, for a lot of people, they want to serve, or they want to affect the quality of thing, or they want to earn a certain money, or whatever it is. So
I think
I
a
also
lot of people are stuck in that mindset that the best dream they could ever achieve is a decent meal and a can of soda. Helping people to expand that belief that they're capable of more is really what we're all about at A World Empowered, at your organization. And all that we're trying to do is help people believe that we can be better than what we are. We can achieve more than what we have, and we can create the life and dreams that we want.
believe, and I would add, back it up with some action. Like, we can we
Right.
can lead by example and have integrity between what we say and how we conduct ourselves and live our lives. And I'm still working on all of that myself.
Well, that's a daily practice too, right? Having the awareness to realize that we're not actually living in integrity in that moment, having the accountability and self-realization, self-actualization to notice that I'm not really showing up the way that I want to right now. I'm not really being the highest form of me in this moment.
Yeah. I wonder how
So
many people have that distinction of integrity. I mean, it's something that I and a lot of my friends and people that I know, we think about it, we talk about it, but I wonder, this notion of inner integrity, I wonder how much of our broad society um, considers that on a regular basis.
just judging by what we see on media, it seems a little bit lacking from time to time.
I can see evidence to support that. Yes.
I don't want to dwell on the negative though. We
Okay.
want to get back into the achieving your dreams parts and what it takes to have the awareness to follow where we're meant to be. Um, what recommendations would you have for people that feel lost, for the people that they want to do more, they want to achieve more, they want to have a dream, but they don't even know where to start? how could we help somebody in that situation?
Yes, I would say pick a teacher.
Mm.
Just roll up your sleeves and pick a teacher or a series of teacher, or start finding your way to the wisest people you can discover. The blessing of life nowadays is that the internet gives you access to virtually anyone and everything. So I have the modalities and the teachers and the things that most resonate with me. And I've studied Buddhism. I'm a Unitarian. The yogic path has kind of emerged more than any. But I was raised, in the Christian tradition. But find a teacher. Find people that are the way that you want to be, and then find everything you can about them and try to emulate them. So I think getting a good teacher is one of the things. I think we talked about earlier about having a life management system, because in the modern world, there's a lot of things to contend to, and having a system so that balls don't get dropped and we can follow through on our big plans that usually involve a lot of small steps. Even just if you want to go to college, or you want to take a course, or you want to develop a skill, or you want a new career job, there's a whole bunch of actions that one wants to take, let alone if you're going to start your own organization. That's a whole nother to-do list. So don't be afraid to get support, like ask for help. And I think I'm finding too that there's virtually very few things that if you have an idea that somebody hasn't already had a similar kind of idea, and we can learn from other people's wisdom. We can get mentors, we can get coaches, we can get advisors. So and I think we said this in our earlier segment too. I think it's really important that everyone has a technique or tool or set of tools that allow them to center and root and become grounded. For me, it's meditation and time in nature. For some people, it could be sports. For some people, it could be art. But we have to be able to hear that silent inner truth in ourselves. We have to be able to find that place where we can sort of tap into our heart or our soul or our innermost truth. And I think, I read somewhere that the average American watches like 30 or 35 hours of television a week, which is that's a staggering number. That's like almost a full-time job, So spend a significant amount of time like going inward, I think every day one should do it, because it sort of grounds you. It really gives you a sense of context, I think that
Helps
most
you
people
become more aware of those little pings, the little breadcrumbs that are trying to keep you on your path and trying to help lead you to where you're supposed to be.
Yeah. And don't worry about getting it right. Just take a step. If you sincerely say, I want to work on this, or I want to change this, I promise you the universe will respond in all sorts of interesting ways,
And one of the things you talk about in the speech that I watched was the greatest of all human potentials is our ability to create. Let's talk about that as it relates to creating our dream life, to awakening to that dream. Because again, realizing and having the understanding that we can create pretty much anything that we set our minds to, anything that we set out and have a desire and a calling in our heart to build, we as humans have limitless potential and possibility to create that thing.
For me, creating is next to the divine. It's a gift. Art is one of the things that brings a lot of joy to my soul. Visual. I'm a musician as well, and I think it was later in life that the possibility of creating one's life started to come to me. But all of us, whether we are conscious or not, are exercising creation. It's a creative choice to say, life just is the way that it is, and fate has assigned me these roles. That's a choice, as well as it is to say, I'm going to stand in the infinite possibilities of creation and consciously choose, what direction I'm going to go in, in relationships, or where I'm going to live, or, let service be my guide, or, earning money, or creating art, or, so we have unlimited potential, as you've said. I just read a quote that somebody said about, like, the saddest thing in life is somebody who has a creative yearning and doesn't ever explore it. So I say, if you have a passion, if you have a life calling, for sure we should explore those breadcrumbs. I like the term breadcrumbs because I think that's what they are. Yeah.
Yeah, through action and attraction, we can manifest and build anything that we set our mind out to. Making sure that we have the paradigm that we believe that we can build it, and a clear vision of what it is we're trying to create, and there's nothing that we're incapable of.
I think that we can certainly try, and we can certainly strive. And I think success in anything is based on a complex series of factors, ability, training, circumstances, development. But, I certainly think that we should go for it. We should go for it in life. And, better to go for it and fail than to not have tried at all. But yeah.
Do you know who
Yes,
Les Brown is?
Yeah.
Do you know who
Sorry?
Les Brown is?
One more time.
Do you know who Les Brown is?
I feel like I've heard the name, but I'm not.
He's a motivational teacher and author, and he
Yeah.
said that most people fail in life not because they aim too high and miss, but because they aim too low and hit. That we need to elevate our dreams, that we need to strive for something further, that we need to try for a goal a little bit outside of our reach, because failure is hitting that thing that is beneath our stature. Failure is not trying hard enough. Failure isn't because we aim too high and miss. It's because we aim too low and hit. And then we sit there, we park, we get off the road, and we say, yeah, that's good enough. I'm done.
Yeah, and I think I just want to say that as a student of nature, diversity expresses itself everywhere on planet Earth. And I don't think that there's a one size fits all answer for all of us. And I don't think there's a one size fits all expression of creativity. And I especially think in the modern world, we don't all have to be CEOs or best-selling authors, or like, we have to find whatever that inner sense of fulfillment is for us. And I think it's very easy to get caught up in, like, a value and a hierarchical sort of thing about it. But I think whatever you do, you should do it like that's your work of art, or that's your saving the world. If it's your job, if it's your family, if it's your home, if it's your, like, what, if it's taking on a role at your congregation, or coaching, like, whatever it is, your job, have you read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance?
I haven't finished it, but yes, that's one of the many, many books that I began and made it a ways, and then got
It's
distracted.
funny to hear you say that. I did the same thing. I started it and finished it like 20 years later, and I couldn't get through it. But he really talks about quality. And I think that's a beautiful thing, to give ourselves wholeheartedly to whatever we're doing. Like, even in this, like, we should be giving ourselves wholeheartedly to this conversation. And then we should do the dishes wholeheartedly. And then we should, brush our teeth wholeheartedly, and we should relax wholeheartedly.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate you kind of catching me on that. It fulfillment really is an individual and a subjective thing,
Yeah.
when it
And,
comes to
and
dream
I would,
fulfillment and what we're trying to get out of life. I don't mean to suggest or imply that happiness and goal setting and dream achieving only happens up here. It's what a person feels fulfilled by, and if a person
yeah. And
feels
the other thing I
fulfilled,
wanted to say,
go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
You're great. Go ahead.
No. The other thing I want to say is that there's different times in our life. There's times when we can be very focused on maybe our careers at a certain time. There's other times, like I know my wife and I've been dealing a lot with, like, as our parents get older, that requires certain time and energy. I have a really good friend and a mentor. She does amazing work with helping people through trauma, but she was talking to me about a time of real activism in her life, and then she's talking to me about how, like, with her aging parents and her clients, like she's just like just getting through her days. It's sort of, that's her form of activism. So it's just, it's always changing, and we just have to sort of honor ourselves through it all. The other thing that I've been learning a lot too, this is like one of the lessons that I just learned in the last week, is about having our work, our is not having our ego or sense of identity tied up in our work. Like I sort of say, a child is born into this world like divine and perfect, just as they are. They don't have to achieve anything to be worthy of love. And so as we do so, but when we lose ourselves and we tie up some sense of value with accomplishment or something, that's a very, very slippery slope. But when we're already that, like, we be as though we already are whatever that thing is, then we can just go and do our work in the world from that place of already enough, and then it's just like your calm, cool actions, chop the wood, carry the water, whatever, yawn, ho hum, whatever. We're not doing this to try and fill some missing that we're not enough or something like that. We're just taking the next step. Yeah.
Yeah, and that goes back to the human being versus human doing thing, right?
Yes.
And
Human being. Yes, yes, yes.
and there was another quote, was it Nietzsche, that said, treat a man as he appears to be and you only make him worse, but treat him as if he already were what he potentially could be, and then he becomes what he should be. So giving ourselves the grace to just be and to show up and do the things that we need to do, and not setting our expectations and our sense of self-worth based on the ego and what we achieve, but also allowing others the same and giving them the opportunity to show up as they're meant to be, treating them as if they already were what they potentially could be, opens the door to allow them to be what they should be.
Yeah. Do you know the Yogi Sadhguru?
Heard
Have you
him.
discovered him? Yeah. He says we should never look up or down upon anyone.
Mm.
We just look at everyone, with total attention, and there's no, yeah. He says we're all on equal footing.
And it goes back to what we were talking about in the podcast when we were talking about inner peace. When we are at peace with ourselves and at peace with the world, and we are devoid of judgment, then we have the opportunity to see people with that same equanimity, to meet another on that equal footing, that equal playing field, that equal level, without the judgment, and not look down or up.
Yeah, and the truth is, if we're all interconnected, if we are like all the wise men and women say we're all one, then we're all just extensions of that oneness. We're all brothers and sisters in the family of humanity. And in another way, we could say we're all parts of the family and humanity. So we're all connected, which is the beautiful thing. Which is why I feel really called at this point in human history to really get more people talking about the possibility of a peaceful world and the possibility of ensuring a basic standard of living for every human being on the planet, which I 100% believe, and my book talks about, we have the ability to do. We have the technologies, we have the people, we have the resources to ensure a basic quality of life for all human beings on the planet. That we
I
should
would
take care of.
love for you to go deeper into that, because I think a lot of people right now probably would disagree with that statement. A lot of people, given what's going on with our own culture here in America, as well as the strife abroad, would have a difficult time agreeing that peace is within our grasp. So help convince us, help convince the skeptics that there is infinite possibility for this peace and hope and optimism that is available to us in this moment.
I think to somebody who's never had a transformational experience or met somebody who's had a transformational experience, they think it's not possible. There's two examples I'll give you. George Wallace was the person who was one of the leading segregationist governors, in Alabama during the 60s. And he had an aha moment where he got off it about racism and was reelected and ran in the 80s, and hired more African Americans than at any other point in history. And so if you looked at the past and who he was, you never would have thought him getting it about how wrong racism and his policies were. He apologized, he saw it. And the song Amazing Grace is a slave trader who had a similar aha moment. So I have experienced and seen and know that human transformation is possible. And that's what it's all about, I mean, any one of us can change and transform, and we just never know what's gonna be that magical combination of circumstances or events, or have that aha moment happen. Unfortunately, it happens for a lot of people at a tragedy, a death or something like that, or end of life, when you've got nothing to hold back. Yeah. So I know that human transformation is possible, and if it's possible for one, it's possible for all of us. I was having this conversation with a team on a project that I'm working on, to say there's a very different question to say, can we do something, than to say, how can we do something, right? So
that comes from
I
a
think
different energetic state, right? That can versus how is an entirely different energetic state. Can is latent with skepticism and fear and doubt, and how is latent with empowerment and opportunity. And it's all I have to do is figure out the method, the technique. It's two completely polar opposite energetic states.
Yeah, and context impacts content, right? So how you frame things impacts what sort of shows up. So there's a phrase that I said to in my book, which is that and this is what an aha moment in feeling the confidence and the inspiration to say sort of what I've said in the book was, when you look at the portfolio of human accomplishment, splitting the atom, unlocking the human genome, space travel, taking the organ of an animal and transplanting it into another species. They're taking like pigs' valves and putting it on human hearts. It's like, it's a miracle. The
Growing an
technology.
ear on a sheep, 3D printing a heart.
It's like I think the breakthrough for humanity right now is that when you look at everything we've done, we can do virtually anything that we focus our attention on. And if enough people said, let's create a healthy, sustainable, peaceful world, we could be there. We know more about health and wellness than ever before. We know more about collaboration than anymore. We know more about discovering truth or discovering truth than ever before. So we've never been more capable. So I think
I want to touch on something really quick, because I feel called. I think one of the really catastrophic mindsets that we have that keep us from the change and actualizing the change that we want to see in the world is the belief that change takes time. We have this paradigm that change takes this indescript, unattainable, undescribable amount of time. And really, ultimately, as I've experienced in my life, change really can happen in an instant. I was a drug addict. I made the decision in a single moment that that was not the course of my life. That was no longer what I was going to do with my life. I decided in a moment to become a different person, to live as a better version of me. And I've seen this time and time again. Sometimes it takes a while for us to plant a seed and then that seed to get watered and for things to sprout and germinate and bear fruit. Sometimes there is a natural order to the time in which things take, but also sometimes change can happen in an instant. And I've
Yeah.
seen it time and time again.
Yeah. I mean, change is like just sort of saying, I feel like it's another way of saying life, right? Because life is never static and change is just, that's sort of a fact of things. But change can happen slow and take a long time. Um, and change can also happen like overnight, in the snap of a fingers. So I don't think that there's any reason that we couldn't change the paradigm, change the conversation, change the narrative, so that the businesses of the world, the governments of the world, the organizations of the world, the families of the world, were contextualizing whatever they do as part of a larger global effort to have it sort of work for all of us. I think one of the questions you asked me at the beginning was about, or a little while ago, was about what do you sort of say to the naysayers who say, we'll sort of never have that happen. And what I know as a sustainability advocate, and I don't want to use the word expert, but somebody who's looked at it a lot, is that basically we need food, water, and warmth. And I would, let's be generous and say medicine at certain times, to live. So everything else is like fluff. So most of our economy is based upon fluff and non-essential things. So if a small fraction of that were being spent on ensuring basics for people, it'd be a very, very different world.
Where would you put love and connection in that? Because I think that those are fundamental human needs as well.
As I was talking about this, I was thinking about physiological needs. So, yeah, I think we have a
For
need
the
for.
body to survive.
Sorry?
For the body to survive, you mean?
Yeah, I was thinking in terms of physical things, as opposed to like, yeah, we need love and connection, we need growth and those sorts of things. But I was thinking in the forms of the outer world,
Well, they have proven that a lack of connection is catastrophic to our physical well-being.
For sure.
They've done studies that connection deprivation is as harmful to our energetic body as smoking a pack or two of cigarettes every day.
For sure. Yeah.
To our immune system and our inflammation levels and stuff.
I was speaking specifically to, do we have enough resources to ensure a basic, so my context was about ensuring
Sustainable
basics, a
communities.
basic quality of life for everyone. So we should no longer have homelessness. We should no longer have hunger. We should no longer have people that don't have access to healthcare. But absolutely, like with 7.6 billion people should have access to love and human connection. Especially if we can easily teach that. I mean, and I think teaching people how to be more loving, so that it's not such a rarefied commodity. We've never been more equipped to deliver that to people now.
Yeah, and that goes back to one of the things we talked about earlier in the show and earlier in the podcast as well, in our ability to be at peace with ourselves. The inner peace gives us the opportunity to be more loving to others. And when we lack that inner peace, we lack that sense of security. When we lack that sense of security, then we often take things out unnecessarily on other people.
Yeah, yeah.
We've gone way over our half hour. I love it. We've basically done an entire additional podcast here. So we're on 2 hours of our conversation. As we're about to wrap up here, Bradley, what are some of your final closing thoughts? If you have little bits of wisdom and insight, one little panacea or inoculation that you would like to spread to the world and everybody watching this, what would that be?
Every day is a day to practice the art of living. And if you want to be a joyful being, if you want to be a happy being, if you want to be a healthy being, if you want to have, do, or be virtually anything, I would encourage you to pursue your dreams. And I would encourage you to become a lifelong student in health and wellness. I would encourage you to find good practices to nurture yourself. I would encourage you to find support to develop skills that you feel that you need to develop, or areas that you feel like you're lacking right now, so that you have the tools and abilities to be the kind of person that you want to be and do the things that you wish to do in the world. And if I can help in any way, please do reach out.
That is freaking beautiful, man. I love that. I love that so much. Everybody, giant smile at gmail.com, Bradley Grove Harvard Hyson, sorry. You have some workshops coming up, I understand, coming up this summer.
I do. On my website,
yeah.
On my website, there's an annual gathering that we do every year. And I was saying, I think we said it in our last section, that taking a retreat or going away is a really powerful way to make a change. For some people, they feel stuck in their lives, and sometimes getting out of our familiar environments and being in the synergistic nature of workshop and going through processes to sometimes address past woundings or traumas and heal, or foster the kind of creativity and insight and clarity about what it is that we want or what's the next step for us. A workshop can be a wonderful way to do it. So we'll do this outside at Sacred Land at the University of Wild in Petersham, Massachusetts. And I have others that I'm in the process of scheduling in the coming year. There's a course called Awakening into Oneness, but you can find all information on my website.
That's beautiful. It's really funny that you mentioned that, because the grant before last that A World Empowered wrote was to University of the Wild to send 7 inner city at-risk youth from Boston to an immersive outdoor camp. So
that was you?
That was us.
Oh my goodness. So you know Larry?
Yes, through a board member and email communication only, but yes.
Wow.
We were so in love with what they're doing and the opportunity that we had to reach these particular at-risk youth that we felt called as an organization to write a grant to make sure that happened. So yeah.
Boy,
small world, man. Small world. That's freaking awesome. So thank you so much for your time. I can't thank you enough. Like, with sincere gratitude, I appreciate your time, sharing your thoughts, wisdom, and insights with all of us. I encourage everybody to check out the podcast, because it was equally as good as this. If you would care to support A World Empowered and follow what we're doing, obviously like and join us on Facebook. Consider being a part of our Patreon community. Our speaking engagements, fundraisers, and Patreon community is the primary way that we raise funds to donate back to organizations like University of the Wild. So thank you again, Bradley. I hope that you have a wonderful day, and I really can't wait for our next conversation. I think it's going to be awesome.
Thank you, Brian. Take care.
You too, my friend.